Our class now. Okay, welcome all of you for our fifth class. This is the fifth class of our course Introduction to Buddhism, and today we are going to talk about the Buddhist teachings on karma, which we call in Pali kamma. So when you see these two words, you should understand the same meaning, kamma and karma. But karma can be used in the context of Hindu and Jain ideas too, but kamma, which is a Pali word, will be only used in Buddhist context. So that's the difference. So this is our lesson plan as usual. I will give you a summary in 20 minutes, and then we will review the answers that you provided, and then we will also review some of the comments that we have given on readings, and then we will have open discussion. Okay, let's start the lesson with the definition of karma. This is the definition given by the Buddha. Very brief statement. Volition, I tell you, is karma. A very simple statement, but there's a depth to this statement. And having willed, one does karma by way of body, speech, and mind. Why I said that it is a statement with some depth. When we really understand this interpretation in the context where Buddha spoke these teachings, the term karma was used in Indian context, in many, of course, in many religious and spiritual traditions too. Particularly at the time of the Buddha, the karma was used to mean ritual action. Ritual action. So, ritual action means that there were expertise in ritual actions. If you use proper materials, proper chant, and proper time, and when that ritual is performed, it must produce an effect on the world. So it's relationship between microcosm and macrocosm. So that was the meaning of the term before the Buddha, the karma. And then later, the Jain spiritual tradition also used the term karma. They gave some kind of moral value to this word. Originally it's simply ritual action, there's no moral significance there. But the Jain spiritual tradition gave a moral value to it. But for them, every action, whether you are aware or not, every physical, verbal action, irrespective of their awareness of it or not, produce karma. And so for them, the body is the big problem of producing karma. Body, according to them, continuously produce karma by just simply being there, by simply survival is a burden on others. So that it continuously produce karma, and that is why they treat. So they also have a belief of soul. So that karma that continuously produced by people with or without their awareness cloud the soul, and in order to clarify, purify it, you have to burn out your karma by purposely going through difficult austerities and practices of self-mortification. So it's more like an automatic or mechanical view of the karma. So mechanically it happens, and so mechanically you have to burn them. So in this context, Buddha gives a very psychological interpretation of the karma. Buddha says it's a volition, which I call karma. It's not external action like ritual actions, and it's not all action that is just happen to occur in our behavior, but it is the volition. And then we have the question, what is the volition? What is the Pali word for volition is chetana. And chetana usually also translates as intentions, but I rather not use intention because it has a sense of large goal that I have intention to do this, but I do this. So what really chetana means in two senses. One is what impels us to do a certain thing rather than other. When we encounter situations, when we meet a person, when we in a situation, in condition, we impel to do something. We impel to do we impel to choose certain action rather than others. And what really make us feel like doing, and that is called chetana. And then based on that, we perform that action, and then underlying mental state during that action is also called chetana, which prompt you to do a certain action, and then enduring mental state during the act, which will strengthen the similar habitual patterns that originally impel you to do, and then produce a probability that you will repeat same thing in a similar situation again. And usually those the mental states or chetana can be based on greed, hatred or delusion, or could be non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion. So what's really the gist of here is that let's imagine that when you are in this class, suddenly a serpent happened to fall on this place. And what we would feel like doing. And each person will have a particular tendency to do different things. And how that tendency, how that likeliness of doing a particular reaction to that situation is determined. That is due to chetana, that is due to your previous decisions, previous actions, and that already has a particular tendency and nature that you probably will take a particular action or reaction given in a given situation. But that doesn't mean that you may not take another decision, another reaction. You are likely to take a kind of reaction, but if we use mindfulness, if we use more awareness, if we use maybe if you're willing to listen to others, maybe you take a different course of action. And what you're really doing there is you are changing your habitual patterns, your more likeliness to do certain actions and to something else. So there's a likeliness of doing certain reaction, certain action, but that doesn't mean that you are limited there. It's not deterministic, it's simply a likelihood, right? Yeah. So when we perform a volitional action, not simply all action, but volitional actions, even after you perform that action, since your volitional involvement during that action, that we call karmic imprints, a tendency is imprinted in the stream of fire aggregates, so to speak. We cannot really call it imprinted in me or in you, in the person, but a stream of fire aggregates. And that imprints creates possibility of making a similar action, so getting a similar reactions. So we have what we call karmic loop. That is why mindfulness is so important to get out this karmic loop. There are wholesome karmic loops, there are unwholesome karmic loops too. So that's why we have these two categories. Akusala, or we call unskillful karmic loops that we have, which are we have chetana influenced by greed, hatred, or delusion. Or we are also capable of doing kusala, or skillful reactions. Like, when serpent is, whenever we encounter a situation, what we feel like doing could be, automatically influenced through generosity or loving kindness. So we have different types of tendencies built in that way within us. And those reactions, those the course of action we take creates consequences, creates realities. The very way that I am talking to you right now, the very way that I am interacting with you right now creates a reality in this class. Either you will be laughing, or you'll be yawning, or you'll be, or you'll be, feel disappointed or bored. But I'm doing it because I feel like doing that, and I have that something impels me to take a certain course of action, and that course of action creates actual consequences because there are other people involved in this interaction, and environment is involved in the interaction. So automatically it produces certain reality that influence me. So in most cases, if my course of action is motivated through generosity or loving kindness, consequences are wholesome, pleasant and nice. And if my my course of action is motivated by others, like greed, hate and delusion, mostly consequences that I'm producing with other people, environment, is unpleasant to me and to others too. I want to make a distinction within the skillful category, what I call a skillful action that leads to pleasant consequences, which are filled by generosity and loving kindness. There's this other category, which is important category, perfectly skillful action that destroy the very potential to produce karmic imprints. So within the good, let's say wholesome category, with the skillful category, we have two subtypes of actions. That certain actions that will lead to pleasant consequences. They are motivated by generosity and loving kindness, but not necessarily wisdom. But there are also higher or better category of actions we call perfectly skillful actions that will not necessarily aim or will produce wholesome or pleasant consequences, which actually aim to undo the already developed tendency, the likelihood that we develop in our mind. So it's undoing of the tendencies. So we call them perfectly skillful action, which is actually the practicing Eightfold Path. Practicing Eightfold Path is not producing wholesome karma. Practicing Eightfold Path is undoing the very potential to develop good and bad both karma. That is a different set of actions. But of course there are wholesome actions we can do, like acts of generosity, kindness, which are motivated through wholesome mental state, but not necessarily based on the deep wisdom. But they are good too. Better than unwholesome ones. So I just want to make that distinction. And the other one I want to emphasize is the contextual nature of the karma. Because of the psychological emphasis that Buddha is giving to this whole whole situation, our mental state can be very complex. So it's quite complex. We cannot draw a very clear rules about a particular course of actions and their consequences, which we tend to do. It's complex. Our mental states are complex, and we only have likelihood to do certain action, but we can also change if we have enough mindfulness and wisdom, environmental conditions, everything. And even the very karmic seeds, let's say we already have a karmic seeds, even the karmic seeds cannot decide what consequences we are going to produce based on that karmic seed, because seed is only a potential. How that seed will grow depends on the other environment and all kinds of things. So sometimes seeds will never grow up. Exactly the same way, whatever karmic imprints we have the similar nature, and that is why the Buddha used that simile of seeds for that. So we can talk about the contextual nature when we go, review the answers in detail. So what we can learn from the teachings of the karma, I would like to point out three themes. One is responsibility, that we become responsible of what we are doing. We realize that who I am today is largely due to what I have done so far. I highlighted largely. What I am today is not is largely due to what I have done so far, because there are other factors involved too. I'm not simply a product of myself, of course I have played a larger part of it, but there are other social conditions, environmental conditions, and many other conditions influence who I am today. But there's also a bigger role that I have, the bigger role that my previous actions have in that whole process too. And second one is autonomy. Then the teachings of the karma should make us realize that I can become, so to speak, anyone by organizing what I'm doing right now. And it also brings the idea of non-self. We will address that later, because nothing is fixed, nothing is in product. We are still in the making. So if I am who I am right now because of largely due to my previous actions, and who I will be in future is based on what I'm doing right now, it's quite open. So if we can organize and be more aware of what we are doing and speaking, if we can become aware of our chetana, our volition, and we can produce a different person in future if we want. So we get that autonomy with that teaching. And then the last one is transcendence that we get. I can become nobody if I want by deconditioning the habitual tendencies that I gathered so far. Let's say gathered so far. Okay. So responsibility, autonomy, and then at the same time transcendence. Not become somebody but become nobody by undoing the developed habitual patterns. When we talk about karmic formation, karma, remember the five aggregates, the teachings of the five aggregates. And if I ask a question, where the karma fits in the five aggregates? Right? Because five aggregates explain who we are, right? So remember the fourth aggregate, which is the formations aggregate. And formation is a bigger aggregate. Within that formation is the karma, chetana. It's within the category of sankhara. And this teaching of the karma actually strengthens the teachings of the non-self. It shows that how what we call I am, what we call I or we today, are simply a lump of habitual patterns that have been developing and developing and developing. The good example given by the Buddha is a plantain tree. If you haven't seen a plantain tree here, maybe an onion. That layers and layers and layers of habitual patterns and patterns. So we have a character, but with no particular essence. But there's an onion. So what are these layers? Include karma too. So we can have new layers and more layers. We can have better layers and nice layers. Or if you want, we can unravel everything and make no onion. Yeah. And the last one is that karma. The other question is that whether karma decides everything. And so we have to understand there are 5 natural laws identified, recognized in the teachings of the Buddha. We call seasonal law, like changes of season and the changes happening along with the season, flowers coming up, we get flu in our bodies and our reactions to different seasonal changes, and that's one particular set of law that's working in our world. And the other one is biological law, that seeds produce plants, and then also there's a germination and maturation and decay and death. So we are also as an organism has that nature of germination, growing, and decay and death, and we are growing all not because of the karma, but that is the biological law. And then of course we have law of karma, the law of volitional actions as one important law. And we also have psychological law, which means how our mind works, how our process of perception works when we see things, and how our mind works. It has a particular pattern of how our mental functions take place. And the last one is the law of what we call Dhamma Niyama, or law of the norm, which is the impermanence, dukkha and selflessness. And that is common for all things. So these are the 5 laws that govern the universe. So the karma is one of 5 in that sense. Our volitional actions play an important role in our life and in the world, but it's only one of 5. Okay, this is what I would like to share with you, and then now we can review our questions, and then I have 2 other slides, and we will discuss later when our discussions unfolds. So I read your answers. I like most of the answers that we have given. I think the first question was, imagine that you accidentally hit a deer, right? Surprisingly, I got many answers that actual people have experienced this thing, actually. And you know, they were generous enough to share their experiences too. Yeah, so many of you have answered that yes, because there's no volitional involved, there's no volition of killing involved in accidentally hitting a deer when you drive, so there's no karma produced there. So to that extent it is right. Yeah, so there's no karma of killing produced there. But if you take this larger picture of volition, so it is not something that we can simply say yes and no. We really have to look into actual incident, how we reacted to that incident, what we feel like doing at that moment. Did we follow that impulse, or did we mindfully change that course of actions? And all these things matter. So it's a little complex than simply saying that. But of course, for sure, we have not done a karma of killing. Let's say we had great compassion at that moment, and we try to save that deer, and maybe we, I don't know, depend on situation, how we reacted. Maybe we have done good karma by reacting that situation, not based on unwholesome truths, but with wholesome truths, right? So it's quite complex. But for sure, we haven't done karma of killing. But what we really have done is completely based on that individual, that situation, and what's really going on in his mind during that time. Yeah, it's also based on, I think Sam has answered that this would be a lesser bad karma than would develop by a willful act of killing. There's definitely a difference between willful act of killing and killing by negligence.
Yeah, I mean, if you were, for instance, driving recklessly or carelessly,
definitely,
then that would be negative karma, I guess. But
definitely.
That would be different.
So that actually shows the contextual nature of the karma. It really depends on the context. Let's say you are a farmer, you are protecting your harvest, and an animal, you are maybe in night you are sleeping in your, let's say, in your farm, or maybe tiger happen to come, and tiger start to chase you. So you try to save your life, and you ran, but still the tiger is coming behind you, so you find that there's no way of escaping. You turn back and you shot the tiger. So you have done a killing, definitely, no matter what. But then compare the situation with something else. You go for hunting. You are looking for animals, and you found an animal. Animal is running as fast as he can to save his life, and you just run after him. You try to find many ways to catch the animals, and when the animal is trying so hard to save his life, you shot the animal. So outwardly the same act of killing has been done, but the karma is completely different. depend on two contexts. What was the volition behind that, and what impels you to do that, and what you promote, what you feel, what intention, what volition you feel during that time. So it's very contextual. So it's not something that we can really draw a very simple rules about it. The question 2 is asking about whether the karma reveals the influence of our past on our present or influence of our present on future. I think most people as answer is both. Definitely is both, and that's what it showed that. The last question was that what is the basis for classifying an action as wholesome and unwholesome? I think many of you have got the correct answer, but the readings is somewhat little misleading, because reading first says that whatever that benefits others is good, and therefore it is motivated by generosity, loving kindness, and so forth. I think it should be read other way around. The wholesome action is an action motivated by generosity, by non-greed and non-hatred, and in certain cases non-delusion, which most cases will lead to beneficial consequences for others. So the gist is the what motivated the action. Did you get it? Like the basis for classifying action is as wholesome or unwholesome is what was the volition. Whether it is motivated through greed, hatred and delusion, or whether it is motivated through generosity and loving kindness and wisdom in some certain cases. And most probably the action that motivated through generosity, loving kindness will are producing wholesome results too, definitely. So, okay, now let's come to the comments part, then we can start the discussion there. One thing I found, Dan has made a comment that whether our general understanding of the karma is somewhat blaming the victim, right? And I think most cases we find that explanation, right? If somebody met with an unfortunate situation, and people who use the teaching of the karma, oh, they deserve it, and then so we blame the victim. So I think it's a good point that we can discuss. What do you think about that? Does really teachings of the karma is a form of blaming the victim?
No. Sounds like it.
Sounds like it? Okay. Why it sounds like it?
Because it seems like our actions, our past actions led up to this moment.
Yes.
In this moment, if I'm having a dagger stuck in my chest,
Okay.
I must have done some bad things to have that happen to me.
Okay. And how about the other person who's having the dagger?
He basically is doing a very
So-
unwholesome.
So who is
karmic
doing the
act.
karma? Is you are doing the karma, or that person is doing the karma?
I'm receiving I'm receiving karma from him, and I'm experiencing my past karma. It caught up to me.
Both
So,
those karmas
now
is
it-
in play.
Yeah.
Both individuals' karma is in play at that moment.
Yeah, and also we have to take into account all the other environmental conditions, social conditions, everything. The karma is not the only condition that decides the situation. There are multiple conditions, but karma is very important. What really karma there is actually our ability, our likelihood of reacting to that situation. Let's say somebody came with a dagger to this place. How we respond to that situation is not spontaneously. How we respond is decided by how we have been responding, how we have been thinking and acting through our life. So we have fashioned certain kind of chetana, certain kind of mental impulse. So if somebody came with a dagger, and how I'm going to react to that situation based on my chetana. So how we are going to react with that person is going to decide whether he will hit you or not. Okay? Yeah. Yes.
Well, I was chatting with Sam about that upstairs, and I said I had a real strange reaction to the killings in Charleston when the people in the church
Yes.
were killed. I
Yeah.
was with a friend and I said, what a terrible thing. And she said, well, you think they deserved it because you believe in karma.
No.
And,
Okay.
and I was just so taken aback by
Yeah.
that comment. I
Yeah.
don't feel like I had a good explanation. I don't think that at all.
Yeah, I think, yeah, thank you for sharing that, because then we have to distinguish the Buddhist idea of karma from stereotype type understanding of the karma. Sometimes basically go along with the Hindu interpretation, but sometimes even Hindu interpretation can be a little deep than that. And if you take that situation, it's not necessary. I mean, there, it's interpreting that as an experience in the consequences of the karma. So, according to Buddhist description, consequences of karma is not something that coming from an invisible source. The consequences of the karma in Buddhist explanation is what instigate based on our actions. If when I have impulsion to act in a particular way, likelihood to act a particular way, and that actions, when I act in a society, in an environment, it creates certain consequences, really it is. And that is what the consequences consequence of the karma. It's not really an invisible force somehow adjusting everything nicely and check and balance with. So when we have that kind of view, that invisible arbiter, or invisible governing principle that somehow balance all things, and that is how we justify all this situation. But Buddhist idea of karma is not that. It is very psychological. Volition is the karma, and that already, remove all kind of mechanical understanding or mystical understanding of the karma.
That's part of the problem I have, is half of the time it seems like Buddhist discourse speaks psychologically, and the other half it seems like it speaks spiritually. I mean, I hear references to the 6 realms, and sometimes the 6 realms are symbolic of mental states in the here and now. Other times it seems like they're being referred to as actual heavens and hells. And the way you speak about karma, it's almost as if, sometimes it seems as if you're speaking about it purely psychologically, if you react in certain ways, and other times it really does seem like you're talking about a different spiritual reality that affects things beyond one's own thinking. And I don't know.
It's purely psychologically, but psychological states creates actual realities. That's the point here. Mm-hmm. It's purely psychological, but psychological states creates actual realities. So
say that again.
Karma is purely psychological, but psychological states creates actual realities. And so psychological states are not only the state that is within the purview of our private mind. It creates actual realities, and realms are also that actual realities that is possible for the mind to manifest in different ways. Right now, how we manifest our mind is this realm. Of course, even in the human body, we got different realms in different time. And in which realm you live long, and which kind of mind that you fashion, in this life will decide if you want to transcend your self-centeredness. It will manifest itself. It will express itself in an appropriate form, which we call realms. Yes.
Ante, that's very easy for me to understand in this lifetime.
Okay.
And it goes a little farther than that.
Yes.
And it talks about the consequences being visited upon people after rebirth.
Yeah.
And this I find much harder to understand, because the situation of it, if you're born in Somalia and have no, as an infant, and you're born into war and strife and famine.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Yeah, let's try to understand how it works in our lifetime fully. So because it certain our volitional impulse, our volition to do certain things rather than others, is not only a result of our immediate actions, immediate choosing of taking particular course of action. It had maybe been conditioned from our childhood. And even the very decision for you to come to this class may have been conditioned, through maybe 10 years ago. Maybe when you decide to, think seriously about life. When certain unfortunate thing happen in your life and you make a decision to look more in depth into your life. And so that, those things slowly built up, and then when this announcement came to you, your decision to follow that course, that chetana, that volition, is conditioned by many previous actions. So even the things that you did when you were 10 years old, maybe let's say 20 years old, has an influence of your very decision to come here, and that decision has consequences, what is right now. So in that way, in long run, our actions can have consequences in long run too. So to describe about other life is a little complicated. But I think if you just understand this, the understanding is the long-term consequences of our actions is important. It's not simply the immediate one. Yes, Greg, do you have?
Well, yeah, the Buddha clearly taught that past life predicts current, not everything, but whether someone's born beautiful or not so beautiful, rich or poor, in this country, that country, these conditions, that conditions. It's all their karmic imprints from not only their past life, but from countless past lives. It builds up and builds up. He also taught that only a Buddha can really understand karma. It's so complicated.
It's not really the karma, the consequences of the karma is what's really complicated.
How it operates.
But when you heard the word karma, we should not always think about the past. It's not about the past, it's something right here, that what we most likely do right now. And it is the chetana, it's the volition, which is right here, not in the past, not in the present. But of course that particular volition is conditioned and influenced by our past decisions and actions.
It doesn't.
We had to talk about past when we talk about the consequences of the karma. That is a little complicated.
Plus it may or may not ripen. The causes and conditions all have to come together just right for it to ripen.
Yeah, like seeds. But certain imprints may not even ripen if conditions are not met.
Well, that's why we have purification practice.
Yeah.
And compassion practice is one of the best practices for blocking karma from ripening, negative karma.
Actually, instead of saying blocking, let's say make them important, right?
Important, yes.
Yeah, make them important. Yeah, that's why I like to talk about the karma and loving kindness. There's a very strong, beautiful connection between karma and loving kindness. And read this sutta. And there's one very interesting sutta, this is called Sutta on the Salt Crystal. And Buddha said that one person may do maybe two persons may do a similar actions, but they may experience two different consequences. And Buddha said that, he gave an example, asked a question. A man were to drop a salt into a small amount of water in a cup, and it can make the water salt. And if you drop the similar amount of salt into the Ganges river, it may do a very insignificant change, almost not really, it's not really visible, or not really visible. In the same way, there's a case that whether a trifling evil deed done by one individual takes him to so much suffering, there's a case. And why is that? Because, and there's another case that the very same sort of trifling deed done by another individual is experienced here and now, and then will only appear for a moment. So this looks like very unreasonable, right? Like one person experience so much suffering, other person experience very little suffering. Same action is done by them. Why is that? This is the reason. The person who's going through so much suffering is undeveloped in his virtue, undeveloped in his mind, undeveloped in his wisdom, frustrated, and is small-hearted, dwelling with narrow mind. It's like a small cup. Even little thing can really make it salty. And the person who is not experiencing that harm, that pain, are people who are developed in virtue, developed in mind, developed in wisdom. Unrestricted means unrestricted is mind, and large-hearted. And dwelling in immeasurables. Actually, immeasurable means loving kindness, compassion, altruistic joy, and equanimity. So what really happening is that when with loving kindness we broaden our mind, we expand our mind. So it's like diluting whatever salt there to make it insignificant, and the karmic potential will be diluted in that development in the mind. So that's the relationship between karma and mindfulness.
Can I ask
Yes,
a question
yeah.
that goes back
Okay.
to the 5 aggregates?
Okay.
Okay, so when I'm dying, which part of those 5 aggregates then floats into the next karma? What do I need to do?
Okay.
Which aggregate do I need to work on? I mean, which
Okay.
reaction of aggregate? I
Okay.
mean, I get like,
Yeah.
I'm loop-de-loop going here
Yeah.
trying to figure out
Yeah.
where it's, am I with you all?
Yes.
Are you with,
So, am I teaching?
missing
Am I teaching a class on rebirth?
No, I'm trying to
Yeah,
get
sorry.
all of the
I just
theories
joke. Of course
aligned.
you
I'm
do.
trying to align them all into a
Yeah.
belief system.
Yeah.
Coming from a strange Catholic upbringing, or this whole soul thing that
Yeah.
goes dead when you're dead and it goes somewhere, to having this rebirth and karma, I'm just really confused and I don't know.
Actually, rebirth is not something that must happen. But rebirth is something that happens when conditions are available. A rebirth happens as long as we have this self-centeredness, as long as we have not overcome our self-identity. It's not something that should happen all the time, but it happens because we want. When we die, we are not okay with that. If you are completely okay with that and fully accept that, and that is what enlightened people do. But we are not ready. We don't like to accept, we don't like to let go of our self-identity that we have preserved so much with so much effort. And so that very attachment and grasping and very need, it's a craving, it's a power at that moment, will push you to further exit in appropriate form. So what's really happening is there's a reproduction of the similar 5 aggregates based on the previous 5 aggregates. It's like a photocopy. But of course then it will grow further. So your question was which aggregates you have to take care of, right? The all aggregates. All aggregates. It's reproduction of similar aggregates based on the previous one, but what really reproduces them is the craving, need for self-existence. Yeah.
Was volition one of the 5 aggregates? Or no?
No, yeah, it is, let's say the aggregates of sankhara, the volitional formation, we call formations. Yeah, so 5 aggregates are like the resultant product of our process. So the sankhara, the formations are the result of the volition, and then of course volition is also again influencing. So it's in the sankhara. Yeah.
Body, feeling,
Formations.
perception, volition, consciousness.
Yeah, the formations. Like the 4th category is the one that contain karma, and karma volition means karma.
Yeah, and I thought volition was a separate aggregate, so that's why I was a little confused.
No,
Because
no.
when you said karma was part of formation, I got it.
Yeah, the karma is chetana. Yes.
You spoke about hitting the deer and so on earlier in people's answers about
Sorry.
karma, like when you're driving and you hit a deer. And,
Yeah.
where does karma fall in place in, like, for example, you also talk about like the hunter who shot the deer and so on.
Yeah.
If you're supplying food for your family, and it's essentially, you know, it's negative karma producing into positive karma, or if you hit a deer and it's so messed up that you put it out of its misery, because that's the more humane thing to do. Where does that fall in line with this intent of karma being something that you voluntarily produce by an action?
Yeah.
It's a weird distinction because, yeah, you are taking life, but you're taking life to essentially fuel life
Yeah.
in other places.
So again, so we go back to original definition. The volition is the karma, right? So then, let's say, and in any situation we have that likelihood of doing certain actions. So let's say I'm killing an animal with an intention of feeding somebody else.
Right.
Okay. So when I kill an animal, what is the underlying mental state? Irrespective of the intention. Maybe the intention influences the underlying mental state. That it may not be fully anger. But again, when you engage in that actions, what you are feeding, what kind of mental state that you are feeding. Okay, so that is one action.
Right.
And then you go and feed your family, and then you promote another volition.
Yeah.
So I think you have promoted two types of volition.
So it's a sense of balance in your own feeling.
It has a balance, but we never know which is the stronger one.
Right. And what about the idea of also putting something like I said, you know, you hit the deer's very, you know, in bad condition. I mean, and it actually happened on farms as well. And you put that deer out of its misery, quote unquote. Like, where does that lie? I mean, you had a voluntary action of taking that deer's life to put it in a better place.
Yeah.
I mean, you're doing a positive thing from a negative action, from a bad situation, I should say.
But I don't know. It's quite complicated. But I don't think that we know better that he will be better placed by killing him. How we know? How do you know? So we don't have knowledge to decide. So we are not in a position to decide for somebody else which place is better for him. So, but deer likes to live even if to the last moment. So why not, just nature takes place, and who we are to decide.
I hit a deer once, broke its legs, the cop came and shot it.
Oh.
I couldn't do anything about either one.
Yeah, and unless they come, they'll give you a confession.
So I wonder what kind of karma the deer had.
Yeah, deer had his own. Karma means that his nature of behaving in particular places, which places he tend to go, which places he don't tend to go. So he has also developed certain volitional, tendencies in him.
It's highly unpredictable. And on one hand, it seems there's predictability. On the other hand, it seems it's random.
That is the uniqueness of the teaching of the karma. There's a particular pattern. The particularly consequences are not fixed at all. There's only likelihood that we generate. And so it really brings so much importance to our present moment. Because our karma is not finished. It is right here. And even our previous karmic prints will work depending on how we are choosing them right now and how we are responding to them right now. Always is the present.
The story about the monk who was beat up, that was in the lessons, wasn't it?
Yes.
So that was his karma because he killed his parents in previous lives. So there's no way, you can't get around that teaching. Nothing happens to a person unless they have the karma for it.
But how about the five physical laws? How about our growing old? How about we are getting flu when the cold season comes?
Those are the conditions of existence.
Yeah, they are not due to karma, they are due to other conditions. So many things happen in our life, you know. I mean, of course, karma is very influential part, but I mean, things are not permanent. It's not because of the karma. That's
So
the nature.
humans as a race are influencing seasonal law.
Yeah.
We're influencing, it says here, the unerring order of seasons. Well, that doesn't really exist any longer.
Okay.
And so each one of us perhaps has a little bit of a, you know, I fly on too many airplanes. I have a huge footprint, you know, carbon footprint in that way. And I'm just thinking about the karma of our species.
Yes.
From the Western standpoint, it seems very odd that you're mixing like natural laws in the sense of scientific laws with, I guess what we would consider spiritual laws. You know, I mean, because when you look at the physical world, you use scientific methods, you know, direct observation, things like that. And then when you start talking about karma, it's it's like apples and oranges.
But yeah, but we can still observe it, like at least not somebody else, but our own. Like we can directly observe it, but like more like introspection. You can really observe. Let's say you in a situation you feel like blaming that person, scolding that person. Okay, you detect that impulse, you detect that chetana, that volition coming, like impel you to do that action. And you become aware of it, and then you slowly analyze it. You know, why I had that volition at that moment. What was the previous, you know, blames? What was the previous action, similar action that I have done that actually created these habits in me that impel me to do a similar thing. So we can actually have that kind of observation, but not in laboratory, but you know, in this lab. So it's still observable, and we can identify patterns. It's again like kind of psychological law, but what really happening is that volition produces actual realities. Because we are reacting in a society, we are reacting in an environment, and that our reaction creates ripples and creates, you know, repercussions, and that's the consequences of the karma.
What you think?
Yeah. So, lastly, what are the guidelines, you know, that we can get for living? You know, that will be the last thing from this lesson. You know, what are the guidelines for living based on these statements? Yeah.
I think first is just mindfulness, to be aware of all these conditions and how they might interact and influence our behaviors.
Definitely.
And to be mindful about what we do.
And also, and I say that, you know, first to understand that our volitions and acts based on volition produce realities, and produce relationships, produce antagonies, and produce, you know, tensions, produce friendships, you know, produce, you know, all other kinds of, you know, realities. So they are not simply happening in our mind, they produce realities. So when we have volition, that is the beginning of a reality. So that's why we have to take seriously and then work with them. And then, of course, as we say, mindfulness and also by changing the way we think, speak, and act, we can actually have different realities. As you have particular reality at home that you don't like, and that is not a must, that is not a given, that is not already predetermined. That is a reality that we create, you know, based on our reaction, based on our speech and acts. So if you want that reality to be changed, we can change that reality by changing first the way we think, by watching them in what volitions, and then changing the way we speak, changing the way we react and respond, and gradually the reality at home will change, and in other places too. Of course, there are other conditions, environmental conditions, social conditions, and other things that we may not have fully control of. And the last one, as Sue mentioned, we have, and actually the last one is we have capacity if you want to undo not simply change them and make them nice habits, but we also have a capacity to undo all habitual patterns, whether they will produce also pleasant consequences or unpleasant consequences, and render them important. That is the Noble Eightfold Path. Noble Eightfold Path is not the practice that produces karma, whether good or bad. It's a path that minimize and destroy the very potential to produce any karma, the potential to have produce karma. Yes?
Okay, what do you mean by undo? You mean like you can change what happened before?
Let's say, if you get a simple example, so we have habits. So we have likeliness of doing certain actions. So there are certain likelihood, certain habitual patterns that will produce that will pleasant consequences, and we can have good habits that can produce pleasant consequences.
You can undo your habits.
Yeah, we can also undo our habits too.
How about what happened before? Consequences, let's say you hurt someone or you had a bad relationship. Can you undo that?
Yeah, definitely. Because right now it's a chetana. What you really have is the likelihood of acting in a particular way based on your previous experience. So you have likelihood of speaking in a particular way, reacting in a particular way. So it is right here. So we can change that definitely. And if you let it come and override you, and if you react in that way, that will produce consequences.
So even when someone else is involved, I can see you can undo your own habits.
Yeah.
Even when someone else is involved, you can undo the outcome.
Yeah, maybe our change of our reaction will instigate different reaction from that person. Yeah, we can gradually guide them. Yeah.
The very first slide that you showed, one does karma.
Oh, okay.
I think that's very important. It's not that karma happens, but karma
Does.
It's more like a verb than a noun.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Chetitva kammam karoti. Yeah. Karoti. It's like not happens, but does. Thank you for noticing that. It's not kammam bhavati. That means that karma happens. It's a kammam karoti. One does the karma. So it is within us actually. Of course we have that baggage of the past, whatever tendency that we already have produced, it always impels us to act in a particular way in situations. But if we can detect that, and then somehow
We can do something else.
Yes, we can start reshaping and changing and maneuvering right here. That is a freedom we should learn from the teaching of the karma that Buddha was trying so hard to give people in that kind of condition when we have this mechanical understanding of the karma. But we are so comfortable in believing the mechanical work of the karma, so everybody go back to that idea, and that is why we have credit karma. Right? That you call credit karma as the mechanical understanding of the karma. So that is not the Buddha's contribution to the teachings of the karma. Yes.
I think you said karma is purely psychological.
Let's say, yeah.
So having will one does karma should be just by way of the mind? If it's purely psychological?
No, because you act out of that.
Manifests.
You manifest with your body and speech. I mean, it's
And everything starts here.
Yeah, but you do it, right? And that is how you get consequences. You act it out.
Okay, the reading kind of was stressing karma is action,
Yeah.
but then you were saying karma is purely psychological, so is it psychological and action?
Yeah, volitional actions.
Okay.
Yeah, volitional actions. What really happened that when you have this volition, that is certain likelihood of doing certain thing, impulsion to do certain thing, when you have that and then you release it and you strengthen that impulsion again. And that the very releasing will create consequences. So how you release it is through your word, through your speech, through your body and mind, through your body and speech. and also even in certain cases in mind too.
That it's not
Purely psychological.
put you in the spot here.
Okay.
It sounds like
Okay.
it's not purely
So
psychological.
originally-
It's one aspect.
originated psychological.
The aggregates.
What did you say?
I didn't hear that. So
It originates psychologically.
it does maybe originate psychologically and manifest, but I don't know how to divide.
When you say purely,
Up here.
I mean, that's a pretty strong word.
Okay.
You're differentiating, you know, between black and white. Purely
Yeah.
psychological. So, I think
No
what-
psychological process occurs without the imprint of the external world acting on us internally. So it is impossible to fully separate, but you can understand it as a psychological event that then manifests through action. Our mind is movement. It's the movement of molecules.
At the
It
end,
then
yeah,
becomes the movement of
yeah.
larger structures of the body.
But, yeah, you are correct that it manifests in body and mind, but the impact of that manifestation is again in the mind, and that will have likelihoodness of producing same impulse again to do that. So it's like, so that's kind of cool. Okay, I think we are, yes.
I wanted to share one thing with the group, that if you don't have anything to do tonight or tomorrow or in the near future, yesterday morning I read that article on Compton, and then later in the day went to the movie and saw The Gift, which would be called a psychological thriller, and I don't know whether it was the influence of the reading. It was all about karma.
Okay.
All about karma. It
Yeah,
was a little
thank
bit
you.
of a frightening movie,
Okay.
but it was well done, and
Okay.
I would recommend it to anybody who would like to
Thank
see
you, thank you.
some
sir.
really awful karma in action.
Okay, thank you very much for coming to
Yeah,
our
Okay.
5th class, and I hope to see you all in the next 6th class, which is the last class. And please make sure that you sign your name before you leave in the attendance sheet.
I forgot to
Yeah.
sign my name last time.
Okay, I will
So, make sure,
I
because
will
I-
make a note.
I
Okay,
want that certificate.
okay. And thank you very much, and we will conclude our lesson here.
Thank you, Monte.